March 21st, 1536. In a single night, one woman murdered more people than most armies killed in entire campaigns. Hürrem Sultan didn't use swords or arrows. She used something far more terrifying. By dawn, 800 of the Ottoman Empire's most beautiful women lay dead from the most sophisticated mass poisoning in human history. What you're about to discover will shatter everything you think you know about palace intrigue. Within the golden walls of Topkapi Palace, the world's most powerful empire housed its greatest secret, a harem, containing over 1,000 women, each competing for the Sultan's attention and the power that came with it. But on this night, competition would become genocide, and jealousy would become the deadliest weapon in Ottoman history. The Ottoman harem wasn't a paradise of luxury. It was a battlefield where beauty was a weapon, intelligence was armor, and survival meant eliminating your rivals before they eliminated you. But even in this world of constant danger, no one suspected that one woman had developed a plan to murder 80% of her competition in a single night. This is the story of how a Ukrainian peasant girl named Alexandra became Hürrem Sultan, the most feared woman in the Ottoman Empire. Captured by Tatar raiders at age 15, sold into slavery, and gifted to Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, she would use her beauty, intelligence, and ruthless ambition to commit the greatest mass murder in harem history. From her first day in the harem, Hürrem understood that survival required more than beauty. It demanded the systematic elimination of competition. While other concubines relied on seduction and charm, Hürrem studied poison, psychology, and the art of murder disguised as natural death. Sultan Suleiman's obsession with Hürrem was immediate and absolute. Within months, the most powerful man on earth had become enslaved to a former peasant girl who understood exactly how to manipulate his desires. But Hürrem's real power came not from the Sultan's bed, but from her ability to make murder look like misfortune. Her first murder was perfect. Gulbahar Hatun, the Sultan's former favorite, died from what palace physicians called sudden illness. But Hürrem had spent weeks studying the woman's habits, her food preferences, and the exact dosage of nightshade required to mimic natural death. It was practice for something far more ambitious. Deep within the harem quarters, Hürrem constructed a laboratory that would have impressed Renaissance alchemists. She collected poisons from across the Ottoman Empire, cobra venom from Egypt, nightshade from the Balkans, and mercury compounds from Venetian traders. Each substance was tested and refined for maximum lethality with minimal detection. Hürrem's greatest innovation was recognizing that mass murder required mass cooperation. She systematically recruited servants, eunuchs, and desperate concubines, offering each group specific rewards for their participation in what she called the final competition. None understood the full scope of her plan. If this story of 800 women poisoned in one night is blowing your mind, smash that like button because we're just getting started. Hit subscribe and ring the notification bell. I've got 50 more historical horrors that will make this look tame. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because I want to know which country has the bravest viewers willing to face the truth that historians don't want you to know. Now back to Hürrem's reign of terror. By 1535, Hürrem had established an intelligence network that would have impressed the Sultan's own spies. She knew every rival's daily routine, dietary preferences, personal fears, and secret vulnerabilities. This information became a database of death, cataloging exactly how to kill each woman without suspicion. Between 1534 and 1536, 17 concubines died from various natural causes, sudden illnesses, accidents, and mysterious ailments that palace physicians couldn't explain. But Hürrem was just perfecting her techniques, preparing for a mass murder that would eliminate all her rivals simultaneously. Sultan Suleiman remained completely unaware of the systematic murder occurring within his own harem. Hürrem had perfected the art of grieving for each lost sister, while secretly celebrating another eliminated rival. The Sultan saw her tears and missed the calculation behind them. By early 1536, Hürrem had conceived a plan so audacious that its success would make her the undisputed Queen of the Ottoman Empire. She would eliminate all 800 remaining rivals in a single night, using a coordinated poisoning operation that would appear to be a tragic epidemic rather than systematic murder. The Festival of Roses provided the perfect opportunity, a traditional celebration where all concubines gathered for a ceremonial feast. For centuries, this festival had celebrated beauty and competition among the harem women. Hurrem would transform it into the largest single act of mass murder in Ottoman history. The poison preparation required the precision of a military operation. Hurrem had calculated exact dosages for each victim based on their body weight, health status, and poison tolerance. Some would die quickly, others slowly, but all would die within hours of consumption. The timing was mathematically perfect. 23 accomplices received their final instructions, each responsible for poisoning specific groups of concubines. None knew the full scope of the operation. Hurrem had compartmentalized the plan so completely that discovery of one element couldn't compromise the entire operation. She had created the perfect murder conspiracy. March 21st, 1536. The Festival of Roses began like every year before, with 800 beautiful women adorning themselves for the traditional feast. They competed in poetry, music, and dance, each hoping to catch the Sultan's attention. None suspected they were preparing for their own funerals. Hurrem moved through the gathering like a gracious hostess, embracing women she planned to kill, complimenting beauty she would soon destroy, and sharing laughter with voices that would be silenced before dawn. Her performance was so convincing that several rivals later remarked on her unusual kindness that evening. In the palace kitchens, Hurrem's recruited servants began the final phase of the operation. Each dish was carefully prepared with specific poisons: arsenic in the rice, mercury in the wine, nightshade in the desserts. The traditional feast was being transformed into a banquet of death. At sunset on March 21st, 800 of the world's most beautiful women gathered for what they believed would be a celebration of their sisterhood and competition for royal favor. This would be their last moment of innocence, their final experience of joy, their ultimate gathering as living human beings. As the feast hour approached, Hurrem made her final preparations, ensuring every poison was in place, every accomplice ready, every escape route planned. She had spent 2 years orchestrating this single night of murder, and now the moment had arrived to test whether one woman's intelligence could eliminate 800 rivals simultaneously. The palace eunuchs announced the feast with traditional ceremony, unaware they were pronouncing death sentences on 800 women. As the golden doors opened to the banquet hall, Hurrem whispered a prayer not to Allah, but to the dark powers that had taught her the art of invisible murder. Every seating arrangement had been calculated to maximize the poison's effectiveness. Hurrem had positioned potential survivors away from antidotes, placed the strongest women where they would receive the highest doses, and ensured that escape routes would be blocked. By the rapidly accumulating bodies of the dying, Hurrem rose to offer a toast to the sisterhood that binds us all in service to our beloved Sultan. 800 women raised poison goblets to their lips, toasting the woman who had just murdered them all. The greatest mass poisoning in history began with applause and ended with screams that would echo through the palace for centuries. At exactly 9:47 p.m., 800 women took their first sip of death. The poison had been carefully calibrated, fast-acting enough to prevent escape, slow enough to allow Hurrem to savor their suffering. For 3 minutes, the feast continued normally as the toxins began their deadly work through 800 beautiful bodies. The first signs were subtle: a burning sensation in the throat, slight dizziness, a metallic taste that couldn't be explained. The women attributed these sensations to excitement or wine, never suspecting that each symptom marked another step toward inevitable death. Hurrem watched with clinical fascination as her calculations proved perfect. By 9:52 p.m., the pattern was unmistakable. Women throughout the hall began experiencing the same symptoms: nausea, disorientation, and burning pain. But the palace physicians had been dismissed on Hurrem's orders, supposedly to ensure privacy for the traditional celebration. Help would not come. Aisha Hatun was the first to collapse, her body convulsing as the concentrated mercury attacked her nervous system. The other women rushed to help their fallen sister, their compassion beautiful and tragic in equal measure. They still believed they were witnessing an isolated medical emergency. When 12 women collapsed within 60 seconds, the surviving concubines finally understood they were witnessing mass murder. Screams erupted throughout the hall as beautiful voices that had once sang love songs to the Sultan now shrieked in terror and agony. The feast had become a slaughter. As chaos erupted around her, Hürrem remained perfectly calm, her composed demeanor finally revealing her true nature. The mask of sisterly affection fell away, exposing the calculating predator who had spent 2 years planning this moment. She was witnessing the greatest triumph of her life. The surviving women discovered that every exit had been secretly locked from the outside. Hürrem had planned for panic, ensuring that even those who recognized the poisoning would be trapped with their dying sisters. The banquet hall had become a sealed tomb for 800 women. The most horrifying detail was discovered decades later. Hürrem possessed antidotes for every poison she had used. She could have saved any woman who begged sufficiently for mercy, but she chose to let them all die. The murder wasn't just about elimination, it was about the pleasure of absolute power over life and death. Hürrem had designed different deaths for different women based on their personalities and her personal grudges. Rivals who had insulted her intelligence died from mercury poisoning that caused madness before death. Those who had mocked her appearance died from arsenic that destroyed their beauty. Each death was personally crafted revenge. The dying women's final words, recorded by surviving servants, revealed the full horror of their realization. Some begged Hürrem for antidotes, finally understanding who had murdered them. Others used their last breaths to curse the woman who had betrayed their sisterhood. Their voices grew weaker as death claimed them one by one. The servants who had helped distribute the poison finally understood the magnitude of their participation. They had become accomplices to the largest mass murder in Ottoman history, their hands stained with the blood of 800 innocent women. Several would never recover from the psychological trauma of their complicity. Between 10:15 and 10:30 p.m., the death rate peaked as different poisons reached maximum effectiveness in their victims' systems. The sounds were indescribable. Beautiful voices that had once entertained sultans now created a symphony of agony that penetrated every corner of the palace. Even the guards began weeping. Surviving witnesses later testified that Hürrem showed visible pleasure as she watched. 800 women died from her poisons. She moved through the hall of corpses like a general, surveying a successful battlefield, occasionally kneeling beside specific rivals to watch their final moments with intimate satisfaction. Of the original 800 women, only 27 survived past midnight, and these were dying slowly from poisons designed to maximize suffering. They huddled together in the center of the hall, surrounded by the corpses of their sisters, knowing that dawn would find them dead as well. When palace guards finally broke down the locked doors at midnight, they discovered a scene that challenged human comprehension. 800 of the empire's most beautiful women lay dead or dying, their bodies arranged in the dining positions where death had claimed them. The sight drove several guards to immediate madness. Chief Eunuch Sümbülar, responsible for harem security, collapsed upon seeing the massacre. His testimony, recorded years later, described the hall as a vision of hell where beauty had been transformed into horror. He had failed in his most fundamental duty, protecting the Sultan's women from harm. Messengers faced the impossible task of informing Sultan Suleiman that 800 of his concubines had died simultaneously. Palace protocol provided no guidance for announcing genocide within the royal household. The Sultan's reaction would determine whether Hürrem faced justice or reward for her massacre. Hürrem's final performance was her masterpiece, collapsing in apparent grief over the bodies of her murdered rivals, her tears seeming genuine even to those who suspected her involvement. She had planned even her own apparent innocence, creating an alibi so perfect that suspicion seemed impossible. Palace physicians found themselves confronting medical evidence that defied explanation. Each woman had died from different causes, some from organ failure, others from nervous system collapse, others from blood poisoning. The variety suggested natural epidemic, but the timing suggested systematic murder. Within hours, Ottoman officials recognized that revealing the truth about the massacre would destroy public confidence in the Sultan's ability to protect even his own household. The decision was made to attribute the deaths to plagues sent by Allah to purify the harem. The cover-up of history's greatest harem murder had begun. The mass burial of 800 women created a procession of beauty and death that stretched for miles through Constantinople. Citizens who witnessed the funeral cortege reported that the sight haunted their dreams for years. The most beautiful women in the empire had become the largest mass grave in Ottoman history. Sultan Suleiman's grief was genuine and absolute. He had lost 800 women who represented the beauty and culture of his empire. But his greatest remaining treasure was the woman who had murdered them all. Hurrem comforted the Sultan in his loss, her embrace hiding the hands that had orchestrated the greatest betrayal in Ottoman history. The 27 women who survived the initial poisoning never recovered their sanity. Witnesses to the greatest mass murder in harem history, they spent their remaining years in a state of psychological collapse, convinced they were living in hell and that Hurrem was the devil herself made flesh. By March 22, 1536, Hurrem had achieved what no concubine in history had ever accomplished. She had eliminated all competition and become the sole focus of the Sultan's affection. But her victory was built on 800 corpses, and the empty harem that was now her kingdom would forever echo with the screams of the women she had murdered to claim it. Grand Vizier Ibrahim Pasha, the Sultan's most trusted advisor, immediately recognized that 800 simultaneous deaths couldn't be natural. His investigation would become the most dangerous threat to Hurrem's perfect crime, because Ibrahim possessed both the intelligence to uncover the truth and the authority to act upon it. He had to be stopped. Palace physician Musa Chalebi's examination of the bodies revealed traces of 17 different poisons, a combination that could never occur naturally. His report to the Grand Vizier stated, "These women were murdered with scientific precision by someone with extensive knowledge of toxicology and access to rare substances." Under interrogation, 3 kitchen servants broke and confessed their roles in the poisoning. Their testimonies revealed the existence of Hurrem's network, the systematic preparation of poisons, and the careful timing that had enabled the mass murder. The investigation was closing in on the truth. Hurrem had anticipated investigation and prepared accordingly. Her network of informants within the palace administration reported every development to her within hours. She knew which servants had confessed, which evidence had been found, and most importantly, but how close Ibrahim Pasha was to exposing her. Hassan the cook, who had confessed to adding mercury to the wine, was found dead in his cell just hours after his testimony. Palace guards attributed his death to suicide from guilt, but the position of his body suggested he had been murdered. Hurrem was eliminating witnesses faster than they could testify. The discovery of 17 different poison bottles hidden throughout the harem quarters provided undeniable proof of premeditated mass murder. Each bottle was labeled with specific victims' names and contained precisely measured doses. The investigation had found the smoking gun. Ibrahim Pasha's investigation had uncovered irrefutable evidence pointing to Hurrem as the mastermind behind the massacre, but confronting the Sultan's beloved concubine with accusations of mass murder would require courage that could cost him his life. He was investigating the most dangerous woman in the Ottoman Empire. Hurrem began systematically undermining the investigation through her influence over the Sultan. She convinced Suleiman that continued investigation was disrespectful to the dead women's memory, that focusing on their deaths prevented proper mourning for their lives. Her psychological manipulation was preventing justice. Within 2 weeks of the original massacre, 12 more people had died, investigators, witnesses, and anyone who had expressed suspicion about Hürrem's role. Each death appeared natural, but the pattern was clear to those brave. Enough to see it, Hürrem was killing anyone who threatened to expose her. Eunuch Mehmet Ali's discovery of Hürrem's hidden laboratory provided the final piece of evidence needed to prove her guilt. The sophisticated equipment, detailed notes on poison dosages, and victim lists written in her own handwriting created an undeniable case for premeditated mass murder. Mehmet Ali was found dead in the laboratory the next morning, apparently killed by the same poisons he had discovered. His death eliminated both the key witness and destroyed the evidence in a fire that consumed the entire laboratory. Hürrem had erased the proof of her crimes with surgical precision. Ibrahim Pasha faced an impossible choice: accuse Hürrem without absolute proof and face execution for slandering the Sultan's beloved, or allow the greatest mass murderer in Ottoman history to escape justice. His final report attributed the deaths to divine punishment. The investigation had been murdered, along with the evidence. With all rivals dead and all witnesses eliminated, Hürrem achieved absolute control over the Ottoman imperial household. She restructured harem operations, appointed only loyal servants, and established systems that would prevent future challenges to her authority. The massacre had given her unprecedented power. When new concubines were eventually recruited to replace the murdered 800, Hürrem personally selected each woman. Based on their psychological profiles rather than their beauty, she chose only those who showed complete subservience, ensuring that no future rival could threaten her position. Through intelligence or ambition, the palace atmosphere transformed from competitive beauty to pervasive terror. New concubines lived in constant fear, understanding that Hürrem possessed the power to eliminate anyone who displeased her. The harem had become a prison where beauty was dangerous and ambition was fatal. Sultan Süleyman's dependence on Hürrem intensified after the massacre, as she became his sole source of comfort. Regarding the tragic loss, her psychological manipulation deepened, his emotional reliance, while preventing him from questioning the convenient timing of her emergence as his only remaining love. European intelligence services began receiving reports about the Ottoman palace massacre from their agents in Constantinople. Venetian ambassador Luigi Mocenigo wrote, "The simultaneous death of 800 women defies natural explanation. We suspect systematic murder by someone with unlimited access and authority." Islamic scholars faced a theological crisis. Was the massacre divine punishment for moral corruption, or human evil so profound it challenged Allah's justice? The debate split the religious establishment, with some calling for investigation and others declaring the deaths beyond human understanding. In April 1536, just 1 month after murdering 800 rivals, Hürrem achieved the impossible: formal marriage to Sultan Süleyman, becoming the first concubine in Ottoman history to become a legal wife. Her crown was won through genocide, her wedding feast celebrated over the graves of her victims. Hürrem's massacre served as a demonstration to the Ottoman political establishment of her capacity for ruthless action. Viziers and generals who had once dismissed her as merely a concubine now understood they faced a woman capable of eliminating 800 people in a single night without detection. Ottoman officials began treating Hürrem with fearful deference that went beyond respect for the Sultan's wife. They understood, without it ever being explicitly stated, that the woman who could murder 800 rivals without consequence could eliminate anyone who threatened her growing political power. Hürrem's children were raised under unprecedented security, as she understood that discovery of her crimes would make them targets for revenge. Her maternal love was complicated by the knowledge that her massacre had created enemies throughout the empire who would gladly murder her offspring if they learned the truth. Hürrem's massacre transformed the Ottoman Empire from within, creating new levels of internal surveillance, suspicion, and fear that would influence imperial politics for generations. The empire that had once been united by shared purpose was now held together by shared terror of internal threats. Perhaps most disturbing of all, Hürrem kept detailed records of her massacre, victim names, poison types, death timing, and personal reactions to each woman's suffering. These encrypted journals suggest she viewed the mass murder not as a necessary evil, but as an artistic achievement worthy of preservation for posterity. June 15, 1536. Just 3 months after the Harem massacre, Grand Vizier Ibrahim Pasha was found dead in his private chambers. The man who had come closest to exposing Hürrem's crimes died from a poison so sophisticated that physicians attributed his death to divine judgment. But those who knew the truth understood. Hürrem had eliminated her most dangerous enemy. Within 6 months of the Harem massacre, 17 high-ranking Ottoman officials had died from various natural causes. Each death removed someone who had either suspected Hürrem's involvement or possessed the authority to investigate her. She was systematically murdering the Ottoman government to protect her secret. Prince Mustafa represented the greatest long-term threat to Hürrem's power. As Suleiman's eldest son and designated heir, he possessed both the authority to investigate his father's household and the moral character to seek justice for 800 murdered women. Hürrem began planning his elimination with the same systematic precision she had used on the harem. Hürrem expanded her poison laboratory to develop new toxins, specifically designed for eliminating male political rivals. These compounds were engineered to mimic heart attacks, strokes, and battlefield injuries, allowing her to murder anyone who threatened her position. While maintaining plausible deniability, European intelligence services recognized Hürrem as a strategic weakness in Ottoman power structure. Venetian spies attempted to gather evidence of her crime that could be used to destabilize the empire, while Habsburg agents sought witnesses who could testify to her systematic murders. An international conspiracy was forming to expose her. Hürrem's counterintelligence network identified and eliminated European spies with ruthless efficiency. Between 1537 and 1538, 11 foreign agents died in Constantinople from various accidents. Her murder techniques had evolved beyond personal revenge to become tools of international statecraft. By 1538, Hürrem had completed her analysis of Prince Mustafa's vulnerabilities and developed a plan for his elimination that would appear to be the result of military necessity rather than palace murder. The woman who had killed 800 concubines was now planning to murder the Sultan's son and heir. Hürrem created an elaborate frame job, forging correspondence that suggested Prince Mustafa was planning rebellion against his father. Her network of corrupted officials provided false testimony, while forged documents appeared to show treasonous communication with Persian enemies. The evidence was manufactured, but it was convincing. Sultan Suleiman's growing suspicion of his eldest son was entirely the product of Hürrem's psychological manipulation. She had spent months planting seeds of doubt, referencing Prince Mustafa's popularity with the army as evidence of ambition and interpreting his every action as potential treason. The Sultan was being prepared to murder his own heir. Prince Mustafa's departure for the Persian campaign provided Hürrem with the perfect opportunity for his elimination. She had convinced the Sultan that the prince's popularity with the troops made him dangerous, while secretly arranging for executioners to be present when Suleiman summoned his son to account for his supposed treason. October 6, 1553, Sultan Suleiman signed the execution order for Prince Mustafa, the son he had once planned to inherit the empire. Hürrem's 17-year campaign of manipulation had achieved its ultimate goal, convincing a father to murder his own child to protect the woman who had murdered 800 of his concubines. Prince Mustafa was strangled with silk bowstrings in his father's presence, his final words reportedly being, "Father, why?" The Sultan's tears were genuine, but his grief was orchestrated by the woman who had spent nearly 2 decades engineering this moment. Hürrem had committed the perfect political murder. With Prince Mustafa dead, Hürrem's own sons became the only possible heirs to the Ottoman throne. She had murdered her way from slavery to the position of founding mother of a dynasty. Her children would rule an empire built on the corpses of 800 women and countless political rivals. Hürrem's methods became the template for Ottoman political operations. Murder disguised as natural death, systematic elimination of rivals, and psychological manipulation of authority figures became standard practice. The empire that had once operated through military conquest now functioned through internal terror. European powers recognized that Hürrem represented a new type of threat, a ruler who could eliminate opposition through untraceable murder rather than open warfare. Intelligence services began coordinating operations to document her crimes and potentially use this evidence to destabilize Ottoman power. A small network of survivors, servants, officials, and witnesses who had escaped. Hürrem's elimination campaigns began secretly documenting her crimes. They understood they were preserving evidence for a justice that might not come in their lifetimes, but which history demanded. By 1540, Hürrem's poison operations required an international supply network that stretched from Venice to Persia. Merchants unknowingly supplied materials for mass murder, while alchemists across 3 continents developed compounds for the Ottoman court without understanding their ultimate purpose. Most disturbing of all, Hürrem began training her sons in her elimination techniques, ensuring that her methods would outlive her. Prince Selim and Prince Bayezid learned poison preparation, psychological manipulation, and systematic elimination as essential skills for Ottoman rulership. She was creating a dynasty founded on murder. The Habsburg Empire launched 3 separate assassination attempts against Hürrem between 1541 and 1545, recognizing her as a strategic threat to European stability. Each attempt failed due to her sophisticated security network and her apparent supernatural ability to detect threats before they materialized. Venetian intelligence services attempted to eliminate Hürrem using her own methods, a sophisticated poison delivered through her extensive international supply network. The plan failed when Hürrem's paranoid testing procedures detected the contamination, leading to the execution of 12 Venetian agents. Hürrem's psychological manipulation techniques became tools of international diplomacy as foreign ambassadors found themselves subject to the same systematic mental pressure she had used on her murder victims. Several European diplomats suffered nervous breakdowns after extended negotiations with the woman they secretly called the Poisoner of Constantinople. Under Hürrem's influence, the Ottoman Empire reached its territorial and political peak, but this success was built on systematic internal murder rather than external conquest. Her elimination techniques had been scaled up to manage threats across 3 continents, creating an empire held together by fear of internal assassination. Islamic scholars debated whether Hürrem's survival of multiple assassination attempts indicated divine approval of her actions or supernatural protection by evil forces. Her ability to detect and eliminate threats seemed to exceed human capability, leading to theories that she had made compacts with forces beyond the natural world. By 1550, Hürrem had achieved something unprecedented in human history. Absolute power gained and maintained through systematic murder rather than inheritance, conquest, or political alliance. She ruled the Ottoman Empire through terror, her influence extending from the Sultan's bedchamber to the furthest corners of 3 continents. But absolute power built on absolute corruption would exact its own terrible price. By 1555, Hürrem's paranoia had consumed her ability to function normally. She employed 17 food tasters, tested every surface for poison residue, and slept in different chambers each night to avoid assassination. The woman who had murdered 800 rivals with poison now lived in constant terror of the same fate befalling her. In 1556, Prince Selim accidentally discovered his mother's encrypted murder journals while searching her chambers during an illness. The revelation that his path to the throne was paved with 800 corpses shattered his understanding of his family and his future. He had learned he was the son of history's greatest mass murderer. In Venice, 1557, representatives from the Habsburg Empire, France, and the Papal States formed a secret tribunal dedicated to achieving justice for Hurrem's crimes. They recognized that allowing a mass murderer to rule the Ottoman Empire threatened the moral foundation of all European Christianity. An international conspiracy for justice was born. The Jesuit order, with papal blessing, launched Operation Divine Justice, a mission to eliminate Hurrem using her own poison techniques against her. 12 Jesuit agents trained in toxicology and assassination infiltrated Constantinople with orders to achieve what European armies could not: the death of the Ottoman Empire's true ruler. The Jesuit assassination attempt failed when Hurrem detected poison in her food seconds before consumption. Her survival seemed to confirm theories that she possessed supernatural protection or had made compacts with forces beyond human understanding. The international conspiracy had underestimated their target. Hurrem's retaliation for the failed assassination was swift and brutal. 63 palace servants, officials, and guards were executed on suspicion of conspiracy. Her paranoia had become a murder machine that consumed anyone who fell under suspicion, creating an atmosphere of terror throughout the empire. The systematic murder of competent officials began weakening the Ottoman Empire from within. Administrative efficiency declined as positions were filled based on loyalty to Hurrem rather than ability. The empire that had once conquered through strength was now being destroyed by the paranoid elimination of its own talent. Prince Bayezid's 1559 rebellion was motivated not just by succession politics, but by his discovery of his mother's murder network. He understood that Hurrem's systematic elimination of threats was destroying the empire from within. The rebellion became a civil war between those who served the Sultan and those who served his murderous wife. Hurrem's response to her son's rebellion revealed the complete corruption of her maternal instincts. She began planning Prince Bayezid's assassination with the same systematic precision she had used on the harem women 17 years earlier. The woman who had murdered 800 strangers was now prepared to kill her own child. In April 1558, Hurrem suddenly developed symptoms identical to those experienced by her poison victims: burning throat, nervous system failure, and organ dysfunction. The woman who had perfected untraceable murder was dying from what appeared to be her own techniques turned against her. Even on her deathbed, Hurrem continued testing every substance that came near her, convinced that enemies were attempting to poison her. The irony was perfect. The woman who had murdered 800 people with poison was dying in terror of the same fate, unable to trust anyone in her final moments. Palace physicians discovered that Hurrem had died from a combination of 17 different poisons, exactly the same number and types, she had used in the harem massacre. The sophistication of the murder suggested it had been carried out by someone with intimate knowledge of her own techniques. The investigation into Hurrem's murder revealed a shocking truth. Only 5 people possessed the knowledge and access necessary to kill her using her own poison techniques. The suspects included her surviving accomplices, her personal physician, and most disturbing of all, her own surviving son, Prince Selim. Prince Selim's behavior following his mother's death suggested intimate knowledge of the murder. His systematic destruction of her personal papers, his immediate dismissal of her closest accomplices, and his refusal to investigate her death indicated that he may have eliminated the woman who had taught him the art of elimination. Within months of Hurrem's death, her network of accomplices began dying from various causes. The systematic elimination of anyone with knowledge of her murder. Techniques suggested that someone was completing the cover-up she had begun, ensuring that the secrets of her 800 victims Massacre would die with the last witnesses. European courts celebrated Hurrem's death as divine justice, with Pope Paul IV declaring it proof that God's justice reaches even into the heart of the infidel empire. The woman who had terrorized international diplomacy for 2 decades was finally gone, but her methods had already infected the Ottoman system beyond repair. Prince Selim's reign proved that Hurrem's murder techniques had become permanently embedded in Ottoman governance. Political rivals continued to die from natural causes, inconvenient officials suffered accidents, and the empire maintained power through systematic elimination of threats. Hurrem's legacy of murder outlived her death. European intelligence services preserved detailed evidence of Hurrem's crimes in secret, archives from London to Vienna, recognizing that future generations would need to understand how systematic murder could be disguised as natural death. The evidence was too important to history to allow the Ottoman cover-up to succeed. Completely, European scholars began studying Hurrem's methods to understand the psychology of mass murder disguised as natural death. Their research created the foundation for modern understanding of systematic poisoning, psychological manipulation, and the conversion of personal relationships into murder weapons. Courts throughout Europe and Asia began attempting to replicate Hurrem's murder techniques, recognizing their effectiveness for eliminating political rivals without warfare. Her systematic approach to assassination became the template for court intrigue across multiple empires, spreading her legacy of murder throughout the civilized world. European courts invested heavily in developing countermeasures to Hurrem's poison techniques, creating detection methods and antidotes that could protect their own officials from similar assassination attempts. Her murder innovations had triggered an arms race in toxicology that would influence court security for centuries. Religious scholars and historians began secretly preserving the true story of Hurrem's crimes, understanding that official Ottoman histories would sanitize or eliminate evidence of her mass murders. Hidden manuscripts in monasteries and libraries across Europe contain detailed accounts that would survive centuries of official denial. Hurrem's murder culture continued, poisoning the Ottoman Empire. Long after her death, a systematic elimination of competent officials and potential reformers prevented the adaptation necessary for continued imperial success. The empire was slowly dying from the same techniques she had used to murder 800 rivals. History's judgment of Hurrem remains complex and disturbing. She had achieved unprecedented power for a woman in the 16th century, but at the cost of 800 innocent lives and the moral foundation of an empire. Her story represents the ultimate question about the relationship between power and corruption. At what point does achievement become unforgivable evil? In 1992, Turkish archaeologists renovating Topkapi Palace for tourism accidentally broke through a sealed wall that had been hidden for over 400 years. What Dr. Mehmet Özkan discovered in that chamber would force historians to confront the true story of the Ottoman Empire's most celebrated woman. Sultan'S poison laboratory had been preserved, like a time capsule of systematic murder. The sealed laboratory contained over 200 poison bottles, precise measuring instruments, and most damning of all, detailed victim lists in Hurrem's own handwriting. Each of the 800 harem victims was listed with their specific poison, dosage calculations, and expected time of death. The evidence was a confession written in her own hand. DNA analysis of poison residues confirmed that Hurrem had used 17 different toxins in the harem massacre, each chosen for specific physiological effects. Dr. Sarah Chen of Istanbul University stated, "The sophistication of these compounds rivals modern chemical warfare agents. She had created a systematic approach to mass murder that was centuries ahead of its time." Forensic examination of remains found in the palace. Burial grounds confirmed the existence of 800 women who died simultaneously in 1536. Tissue analysis revealed the same 17 poison types found in Hurrem's laboratory, providing scientific proof that the most devastating mass murder in harem history actually occurred. Contemporary criminal psychologists studying Hurrem's methods have identified her as history's most successful female serial killer, with techniques that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of human psychology, systematic planning capabilities, and complete absence of empathy. Dr. Robert Clark concluded, her methods represent the theoretical maximum of human capacity for systematic murder. Research in European archives exposed a centuries-long conspiracy to suppress evidence of Hurrem's crimes. Documents from 12 different governments showed coordinated efforts to prevent public knowledge of her systematic murders, recognizing that such information could inspire imitation or destroy public faith in governmental authority. Intelligence analysts have identified over 40 cases since 1950 where systematic elimination techniques similar to Hurrem's have been used by modern power structures. Her methods for disguising murder as natural death, eliminating witnesses, and maintaining plausible deniability continue to influence contemporary political assassination programs. Academic institutions worldwide have attempted to suppress detailed research into Hurrem's murder techniques, arguing that publicizing systematic assassination methods poses security risks. Professor Maria Santos was dismissed from Cambridge for attempting to publish complete analysis of Hurrem's poison formulations, demonstrating that the conspiracy of silence continues. Security agencies studying Hurrem's preserved murder manual have incorporated her techniques into modern assassination training. Her systematic approach to target analysis, poison selection, and witness elimination represents methodologies that remain effective. 500 years after their development, history's greatest female assassin continues to teach murder to modern professionals. Topkapi Palace faced a tourism crisis when Hurrem's true story was discovered, as the popular romantic narrative of the Sultan's beloved wife conflicted dramatically with evidence of systematic mass murder. Palace officials chose to maintain the sanitized version while quietly sealing the poison. Laboratory discovery from public access. Feminist scholars remain divided about Hurrem's legacy. Some argue she represents female empowerment in a male-dominated society, using available tools to achieve unprecedented authority. Others contend that celebrating a woman who murdered 800 other women undermines feminist principles. Her story resists simple moral categorization. Military researchers studying chemical warfare have identified Hurrem's 1536 operation as the first documented case of systematic mass poisoning for political purposes. Her techniques for simultaneous toxin delivery, victim incapacitation, and evidence elimination influenced the development of modern chemical warfare protocols. Criminal cases worldwide have shown evidence of Hurrem's influence as modern murderers adopt her techniques for systematic elimination and evidence destruction. The publication of her methods has created what psychologists call historical contagion, the spread of ancient murder techniques through contemporary criminal populations. Political scientists analyzing modern authoritarian regimes have identified structural patterns identical to Hurrem's systematic elimination methods. Her techniques for converting personal relationships into murder weapons, disguising assassination as natural death, and eliminating witnesses have become standard features of contemporary tyrannical governments. Despite 500 years of historical evidence, modern societies continue to fail in recognizing the warning signs that preceded Hurrem's systematic murders. The gradual elimination of rivals, the consolidation of authority through fear, and the use of plausible deniability for systematic assassination remain effective because each generation must learn these lessons anew. Hurrem's story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the relationship between ambition and evil, between achieving power and maintaining humanity. At what point does the pursuit of authority justify the systematic murder of innocents? Her 800 victims demand an answer that each generation must provide for itself. The lesson of Hurrem Sultan is not just historical, it's eternal. Every society must maintain vigilance against individuals who view other human beings as obstacles to be eliminated rather than lives to be respected. The systematic murder of 800 women began with a single poison and a single victim. Prevention requires recognizing the pattern before it reaches industrial scale. Sultan proved that systematic murder could be disguised as natural misfortune, that mass assassination could appear to be divine punishment, and that absolute power could be achieved through absolute corruption. Her poison laboratory stands empty now, but her techniques survive in the shadows of modern power structures. 800 women died to teach us that evil can wear a crown, corruption can speak of love, and murder can masquerade as statecraft. Their voices cry out across 5 centuries with a single message: never again allow power to concentrate in hands capable of such systematic evil. Remember their names, honor their sacrifice, and guard against the emergence of another who would poison the world one rival at a time.